If you feel stuck, trapped, and almost like anything you do in Apex just results in you failing to perform, well, it might not take much to change this. Professional Apex players can be at the top of the game because they do so many little things right, and if you can implement even just one of these things, you are going to be better. Here's 12 tips pros use that you don't, but absolutely need to today. One of the most important things in Apex that a pro player does understand is overextending in third-party management. Playing with a team that lacks experience and who overextends in fights or is really playing on an island of their own is, as we all know, incredibly frustrating. Coordinating and moving at the same time isn't the be-all of Apex, but moving together as a team can have so many benefits, as the difference just a few steps on your own can have is going to be massive. Getting target locked by squad, isolated, team shot, stunned, focused, and shot by multiple teams are just a few of the effects overextending can bring to you. Obviously, you cannot always coordinate and control your teammates' movements, but be sure to have the discipline and the ability to self-regulate your movements so you are not part of the problem. Understanding that actions have consequences is a must. Not only will coordinating and not overextending help you win more battles, you'll also be able to much more effectively take down enemy teams in a way that prevents you from getting third-partied, since you should be much quicker to take and finish that fight as a team. Remember, the main cause of third parties is taking too long and drawing out fights. In order to play at this high level of team play and coordination, you need to be utilizing your downtime as much as possible to either scat around, figure out your next play, or the one thing that everyone needs to be doing more frequently, staying healthy. Anytime you are not at full health, you should be utilizing any downtime that you do have to heal up. Keeping yourself ready to go at a moment's notice not only makes you more efficient, it makes Apex a numbers game between damage intake to health replenish to damage output. Good players capitalize on cracking enemies, so if you aren't staying healthy, you may incentivize a decent team to push you and you won't even realize it. A second tip for this is to also be utilizing the proper healing items. If you know enemies are not too close, or if they are not pushing you, you should be using small heals and saving the big heals for when you really need it. It's a fact that everyone is going to take big damage, get cracked, or even get knocked, but this can be alleviated through staying healthy. But the one thing that you will hear pros say literally all the time is to watch over me. This basically means just look at me, because either I need to back up and get some space, or the big one, which goes with our previous tip, I am healing to stay healthy. This is having team awareness, where they are and how much health they have. While understanding enemy locations is obvious, it's just as important to be aware of your teammates' locations. If you want to take team awareness to an entire another level though, having a consistent squad like any pro team helps a lot with your team synergy. You'll over time be able to know their capabilities, play style, and coordinate movements even without talking. Basically, don't play with randoms. You should hop into my community Discord, where we do have over 16,000 members who are constantly looking for others to play with. Since nothing is isolated in Apex, to better assist the previous handful of tips, it's critical to have a high-level understanding of your loot, both from a resource priority and time management standpoint. One of the biggest ways to tell an average player from a pro player is their ability to loot fast and efficiently. Bad players nearly always spend way too much time running around and picking up loot, whereas a good player can prioritize what they need and move on. But the big thing is the amount of time that you do spend in a death box. Finishing your kills and then looting that death box should honestly be done in less than 6 to 7 seconds at most. This helps keep you mobile and ready for third parties that are inevitably coming, since Apex's audio does travel quite far. If you want a specific way to improve your time in a death box, a baseline priority should be to get an armor swap if needed, then ammo if needed, as you can't fight without ammo, then healing items, and then those shiny attachments and grenades. Again, this is really just a baseline, as your priority can change in the specific moment depending on if you are in a fight, right after a fight, or if no one is seemingly around. Regardless though, always keep this baseline in the back of your mind, and it will help you take more fights and improve rather than just looting all game long. So going hand in hand with the last tip is a very specific word of advice or strategy for armor swapping, specifically for controller players, but it can also apply to any PC player who is being less mobile. When you do enter a death box and are trying to get that armor swap in a fight, all controller players need to learn how to jump as they enter the death box so you can get better armors and just take less damage. This is again one of those things that highly skilled players are going to do all the time, as being immobile in Apex, especially with others around or in combat, is a death sentence. So if you can implement a little jump or slide as you go into a death box or past it, it's going to give you a lot more survivability and just be harder to hit. Of course, you may not need to do all this all the time. If you do have some good awareness, this can be quite useful, but it is one of the harder things to master. This rolls us right into having great positional awareness when you are rotating, choosing fights, or areas to defend. Much of this does come with experience, which a pro player has a ton of, and you won't be able to replicate this overnight, but there are some big things that you can do and consider that is going to get you about 90% of what they have quite quickly. First is understanding enemy positioning. This contains a couple aspects, but the easiest is for you to monitor where players are dropping as you do come down off the drop. This does not just mean in your POI, but also neighboring points of interest. Knowing where most teams are means you can better understand their potential rotation paths and give you greater insights into how a match is going to be played out, even from the moment the first ring does pop up on the map. Second to this is identifying power positions like high ground or areas where enemies' access is limited. This always gives you an advantage as high ground is mostly regarded as king. Third is ring locations. Rings in Apex and endgame spots are not infinite, so the more you play, the more you can simply predict where the endgame will be, and thus you are going to be able to position yourself and the team in those power positions. One thing to know is that endgame spots rarely, if ever, will end in buildings. Many simply just do not know this, so if you are positioning yourself for an endgame fight, just know that the game is probably not going to end inside that building, and it might be just outside. Hand in hand with positional awareness is showing urgency, and the opposite, to not rush fights. Depending on the situation, yourself and pros need to show extreme urgency to either take a team out prior to getting third-partied, or maybe to show urgency in rotations to get high ground before other teams do. Showing urgency in this manner is critical, and being able to acknowledge this is important. It's why you are going to hear many pro players more or less screaming to their team to do something or push something, because these seconds and fraction thereof do matter a ton. Second to this is to not rush fights, and this could sound a little contradictory because drawing out fights can result in third parties and a slew of other problems, but if you are rushing into an engagement while you are weak or not properly equipped for the specific moment, such as not being reloaded or not having enough ammo, this is a much worse thing to do, and it's more or less just going to be a throw on your part. One huge thing pros can do is to extend engagements to draw out enemies, force mistakes, and keep themselves healthy. Not rushing battles can sometimes be one of the best ways to counter someone who is better than you, as it forces that player to be impatient and maybe make some mistakes. Drawing out engagements can also be a great way to 1v3 or 1v2, as you get time to separate the enemies and take them out one at a time. Playing against better players. In some sense, it's something no one really wants to do, as playing against better players is going to result in your chances of winning going down quite a bit and some hardships on your end. However, nothing great is easy, and playing against better players is really the only way to actually improve when you do reach an average to upper level of skill. This is going to force you to deal with players who play in a different way, where timing is more critical, accuracy in your guns is more important, and overall, it makes you dig a little bit deeper to perform. This is generally why ranked Apex, besides Season 17 and Season 12, is a great way to improve, because you are playing with players at your skill level, ideally, while Pubs is great to build mechanical skill and overall just embrace the chaos, as it kind of lets you deal with a lot of players at once, even if they are not as skilled. Once you become an average player, say 1 to 1.5 kill per death, I think playing solo duos and then some days solo trios is the best way to improve. It's going to force you to rely on no one else, and it can really show you the importance of what we just talked about, urgency and showing a little patience. While Apex does have a ton of ways to outmaneuver and outduel your opponents, the most significant thing in any player's arsenal is going to be something that is external, their surroundings, and this is cover utilization. Another thing that makes pros so great at Apex is that they are able to maximize their outgoing damage while minimizing the damage incoming, also known as min-maxing. Swinging wide, getting shots, and moving across the open will happen once in a while, as it needs to, but for the most part, anytime you leave cover and are not using some sort of object, whether it's rocks, trees, terrain from height, to cover parts of your body, it means you are just giving enemies an easier time at you. Cover absolutely needs to always be in your mind when you are rotating, and you need to be sticking to it like glue. Also, you need to check your ego. Don't overpeak enemies. Just don't. Also, the longer and later a game lasts, the amount of cover options does get reduced, and this is why you are going to see certain legends like Callus and Rampart being very useful in the ALGS, as they can better enhance and create cover for the team when the options are far and few between. We aren't done yet, but if you are enjoying the video, or if you just want to support me, hit that like button. I appreciate the support. Respawn themselves have declared Apex to be an 80% first-person shooter or gun game, and then a 20% ability game. Whether this is true or not is not the question, but a massive fact is that gun skill can and will always outshine everything else in Apex. If you don't have the ability to shoot and control your guns, you simply are just not going to perform no matter what else you do take away from this video. Some have it, some don't, but surely all pros at the top of the game are a master when it does come to their shot. And this is not even just the guns you like to use. This means when you are forced to grab that RE45, that Mozambique, maybe that longbow, you need to be able to perform with these less meta guns, as you won't always get that perfect loadout off your drop. Lucky for you though, gun skill is one of the most actionable items in the game, and this starts with using the firing range and actually putting that time in. This brings us to discipline. Implement a training routine and stick with it. Trust the process. If you are struggling with Apex's weapons though, here's a couple really great training routines to improve your skills nearly instantly. For one, do not overcomplicate and overthink it. Each day that you are going to play, practice with 2 to 3 weapons that you want to focus working on, and spend 1 minute tap firing between the signs, 1 minute spraying randomly the moving bots, and then a 3rd minute hip firing and close range engaging the bots which are firing back. During this, you should practice side peeking to try and minimize incoming and maximizing your outgoing damage. I really only recommend 3 to 5 minutes in the range if you aren't playing for more than say 2 to 3 hours, as time in game is going to be the best. If you do, however, want to learn the recoil of weapons in an aggressive and accelerated fashion, practicing gun sprays in sets is one of the best ways to do this. What this means is to practice by firing 5 rounds at a time, master this early recoil, then spray 10 rounds, and then try to get a good feel for this, and then 15, and then 20, and so on. By practicing this way, you can more rapidly get a feel of what you need to do to compensate and control that recoil, rather than trying to learn the entire mag every time. Remember to practice smarter and not necessarily longer or harder. Understanding and accepting that losses happen is something that everyone needs to understand. When a pro goes into an ALGS tournament, or if they are trying to qualify, they can play 18 matches, sometimes even more. This is because one thing is absolutely key over everything else, and it is consistency. Consistent teams win more, but more importantly, they minimize their losses and mistakes, and they learn from them. Being consistent with everything is gonna no doubt lead you to being a better player. Check out this video to figure out which legend to main if you are struggling. Hit that like button, and I will see you in the next one.